friends, it's Cake Over Keto time, your non-diet podcast that's here to sit beside you, standing up against diet culture and offering a safe, healing space if you're on your way to food and body freedom. Let there be no regret, shame, or self-punishment when we eat. I'm Mel Wakeman, registered nutritionist, intuitive eating practitioner, non-diet counsellor, and lover of Reese's peanut butter cups. I specialise in disordered eating and recovering from chronic dieting, body dissatisfaction, and eating disorder recovery, all through a weight-inclusive lens. Please keep your ears plugged in. What's coming up in this episode is right around the corner. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the scary side of food-focused celebrations. It's that time of year. Now, is it spooky that this is episode number 13? Nah, I'm not superstitious. Just touching some wood there. Now, I'm more scared of my son having a messed up relationship with food than worrying about how much sugar he eats. That's because developing disordered eating or an eating disorder is far unhealthier than actually eating the sweets or the candy, whatever it is. So yeah, I buy all the sweets and the chocolate and the biscuits. And there are some boundaries that exist as to when he has these, but me doing this doesn't mean I don't care about him. It doesn't mean that I can't be bothered or that I'm a bad parent. Ultimately for my lad, he enjoys what he has. But it's kind of amazed me how it's not ever been a big deal for him. And thankfully that now goes for me too. But it wasn't always like this, especially when it came to any festivities that centred around food. So let's take Halloween as it's right around the corner. It's a sugar is shit show, isn't it? In fact, it's this time of year, October, right the way through to January and beyond, that authoritarian gavel is tapped on our shoulders with conflicting messages like, oh, go on, treat yourself, you only live once. Here, buy some more. It's never going to be this cheap again. Shit, no, not that much. Geez, are you looking for an early grave? And then you'll get the kind of people that go, I could never bring myself to eat that, accompanied by a look of disgust. No wonder this time of year is a trigger fest for so many. Phrases like those I've just mentioned are derived from a culture that values power over others, and those who judge, shame, and say your diet and your body determine your worth, they do not care about you. And navigating events like Halloween with a difficult relationship with food, or you've been diagnosed with an eating disorder, it can be so stressful. And this isn't just a kid's thing. It doesn't matter how old you are. Sweets and treats have a way of kind of showing up one way or another during Halloween, regardless of age. So children might be trick-or-treating and come home at the end of the night with a bucket full of lollipops and fun-sized chocolates. I remember being in uni, Halloween became kind of cool again, and we all got dressed up and smashed on our own Mars bar vodka that we made. Good times. Later in life, you might have a sweetie selection bag in the house to share out to the mini trick-or-treaters in your family. Or maybe you're faced with leftovers being brought into work because actually no one actually wanted to answer the door, so they turned all the lights off and sat on the sofa eating the stash themselves. So in this episode, I'm getting my fingers firmly stuck into the fear-mongering that gets way too loud at this time of year and help you navigate these events with some simple strategies that will help lessen the anxiety and help you discover some joy. So get that kettle on, feel free to take the biscuits in, find a cozy spot. In the meantime, if you'd like to follow me on social media, please do. I'm on Instagram as me, Mel Wakeman, and I'm also on TikTok as Cake Over Keto. Feel free to drop me a message if you'd like to carry on the conversation. I promise I will get back to you. Let's begin with some debunking. I want to give you some reassurance about sugar particularly and combat some of the fear-mongering that surrounds, quote unquote, poor food choices when it comes to body weight and health. Now, we are conditioned to believe we make ourselves ill and we give ourselves diseases by eating too much. We learn to distrust our own bodies, to fear our bodies, to fear weight gain. And we believe we must eat less in order to, quote unquote, cure conditions, which is so messed up because there are no medical conditions that can be cured by weight loss. Now, you might like to listen to the last episode of season 1 of Cake Over Keto. My GP keeps telling me to lose weight for more on that. I think you might like that. Now, I've got 3 statements here that apparently everybody knows are true. But the thing is this, just because everybody says, and this includes doctors and health professionals, doesn't make it true. Number 1, fat people die younger. Wrong. Folk who are overweight, and I don't really like that term because it's like over what, but anyway, yeah, people that are in a slightly bigger body actually live longer than normal weight folk, and this is normal according to stupid BMI. And actually being very fat, so the O word, fails to show up as a statistically significant increased mortality risk. There's no significant risk of you dying, basically. So maybe you want to rewind those last 15 seconds and listen to that again. Here's another one. Losing weight is good for you, especially if you're diabetic or have high blood pressure and cholesterol. Again, wrong. There is no evidence to support this. There is evidence, however, that shows, certain lifestyle changes independent of weight loss, so without the focus on weight, can improve blood sugars, blood pressure, and cholesterol levels. Now, this still doesn't mean you still have to give up sugar foods and just not weigh yourself, but it does invite a very different perspective on what health actually looks like or could look like and how it could be achieved. And let's not forget that good health is a privilege that not everyone has. And we can't ignore the fact, and I know I've said this before, there is no safe, effective, or permanent way to lose weight, because up to 97% of dieters will fail to maintain weight loss for more than 5 years. And there's so much evidence that points to a variety of negative health outcomes that have impacts both physically, emotionally, and psychologically. And the last one, sugar gives you diabetes. Again, wrong. Sugar certainly doesn't cause type 1 diabetes, which is one way you need insulin. And sugar doesn't directly cause type 2 diabetes either. Who knew? There are so many factors that affect how our body regulates blood sugars. And because of that, I'm going to dedicate a whole episode to this in the next but one. So do come back for that. So how can we have the foods we enjoy and that we would like to have in our diet without losing our shit? Let's try the all foods fit approach. Because all foods can truly fit into a healthy diet, barring genuine medical restrictions, no matter what diet culture or your eating disorder might say. And things that some folk might suggest can include, don't buy them in the first place and then you won't be tempted, which is, I get that. But it might mean you end up as a moody Halloween Grinch instead, and it feeds into the scarcity mentality that your body doesn't trust you when the food is going to come again. So you're likely unable to stop thinking about said foods. And when you do actually get your hands on it, you're more likely to binge. And you know what? It's just not really very practical when you live with or spend time with other people. Another one is buy the stuff you don't like and give that to people, which means for me, I could buy some chocolate limes. Does anybody like those? But does that really work? So for anyone like me who has raided the cupboards or the freezer for anything that resembles sweets, chocolate, I don't know. So let's, for example, say freezer burnt cookie dough. Yep, done that. Icing sugar out the bag. Yep. Stale marshmallows. They make your teeth squeak. Out of date chocolate baking chips. So when you're desperate, it calls for desperate measures. So these rules don't really work either. And I think the problem is we're conditioned to believe we only have 2 choices. You do or you don't. And it feeds into that whole all or nothing rhetoric of diet culture, which also suggests that foods are good or bad and your choice determines what kind of a person you are. So shall we stop doing this? Because there really is no single food or food group that is healthy or unhealthy, and that includes sweets and chocolates and any other kind of festive food. And making statements about any particular food being healthy or unhealthy ignores our individual needs. It ignores our individual bodies, our psychology, our mental health. It ignores the enjoyment factor and the overall context of the situation. And what I mean by context is, let's just say, for example, you have anxiety around eating peanut M&Ms. And you've got some and you find yourself wanting a snack, but you're thinking you should avoid them. But the healthiest thing in that moment may well be eating your M&Ms. Basically because number one, peanut M&Ms are yummy. And number two, working on reducing your anxiety is a healthy choice to make. And this is because anxiety spikes our stress hormone cortisol, and the deliberations and beratement and mental gymnastics that go on in your head about eating, shouldn't eat, not eat, earning, working off those M&Ms absolutely raises cortisol in your body. And that's not good. Plus, the M&Ms have carbs and fat and protein, which will help you do what you need and want to do in your day. So avoiding or cutting out the peanut M&Ms or any other food is often not the best choice. It tends to backfire because your cravings will intensify and you'll likely find yourself either binging on them or anything else at some point. The healthy choice for you is absolutely personal to you alone. So we kind of need to learn how to trust our body again, to rebuild that trust and confidence so that we can trust our body around these foods rather than focus on the avoidance. So can we shift away from sugar is the devil? And you might want to go back to the last episode for more on that as I delve into food addiction. And let's talk about the benefits that everyone else seems to like to ignore. Like, carbohydrates give you energy. They are essential for keeping your blood sugar levels from dropping too low. No one talks about that. And you'll probably know that when that happens, one, you feel shit, and two, your brain will send out chemicals that drive you towards whatever high carb foods are near you or available to you. This is a survival mechanism, not an invitation to fight your body or test yourself on how much willpower you think you have. Number two, carbohydrates are really important mood boosters. Not eating enough of them can absolutely have a negative impact on our mental health. We need carbs to make serotonin, the hormone that helps us feel calm and relaxed. We need carbs to help us make dopamine. So not having enough carbs can really make us struggle with low mood and irritability. Number three, they add pleasure and satisfaction to your eating experience. And whilst chocolate eyeballs and gummy skulls and vampire teeth might feel scary to you, not in terms of appearance, food isn't just about fuel. It's also about having fun. That's one of our human needs. And talking of satisfaction, fats are great for giving us that contented, there we go, button feeling, They digest more slowly, so they stop us feeling hungry all the time. But I think more importantly, fats make food taste delicious. They provide the flavour and the mouthfeel, allowing us to leave the bowl or the table without feeling preoccupied. Because when we eat enough fat at a meal, it signals your gut to tell your brain to relax, which helps you think less about food, so you get to pay attention to other things and other people around you. So rather than trying to force yourself to make a decision out of two options, I invite you to consider a third option. So rather than stay stuck in the deliberation of, I will have this or I shouldn't have this, What if you said, I can have it now, or I can have it later? It's a really subtle shift, but it's a way of keeping the door open. Because as much as some foods are associated with a particular time of year, the reality is you will still have access to those foods. It's not a now or never situation. Gone are the days of the tin of Quality Street being opened on Christmas Day, and once it's gone for another 365 days. Like, we can buy them all year round. We can buy mince pies for more than 6 months of a year. You can buy chocolate any day of the week. It maybe just won't have a purple and green or an orange and black Halloween wrapper. See what I mean? And it can really help to remind ourselves of this so we don't fall back into that scarcity mode. Which feeds into my next point. You don't have to save it for later. So knowing you'll be eating maybe more sweets and chocolate over this time of year, it's not a reason for you to hold back, save yourself, starve yourself beforehand. Because when we do this, we tend to overlook what our body is saying to us in terms of hunger. So when we're expecting to go out for a nice meal, or we're expecting to have more, treats brought round, it's really typical to ignore your hunger. But that means you're much more likely to experience binging or overeating because you're so bloody hungry. But the tendency is to associate that difficult eating experience with the food and then wanting to sort of delve more into the avoidance strategy. It doesn't work. Instead, really think about your basic needs. Try to eat regularly, eat enough. Try to stick to your normal meal times, patterns and meals in terms of what normally works for you. But also know, as I said in the last episode, it's normal to overeat. It's not something to feel guilty about. You haven't done anything wrong. It just means you're human. And there are no rules about what you are supposed to eat at any one time or event. And lastly, you deserve to eat and get enjoyment from food. Too many folk feel missing out is the sacrifice we have to pay for having what we want, that there has to be a payback. But there doesn't. We can just move on, Unless we give it power, food doesn't inherently have the ability to determine your worth. It is just food. And maybe can we build some appreciation and respect for the food that we eat, especially when it's not what we planned or hoped for, or the outcome is not what we wanted. Can you start treating yourself with respect too, taking care of your body? And that includes, in terms of what you feed it, but also what you want to feel around food and want to feel in your life, even though you might not feel great in your body right now. Because we are meant to enjoy food. So could you work on creating a satisfying experience, giving yourself permission to connect with your food and savor what you eat? It's really interesting when people do this. Many people find out they're eating foods they didn't actually like. They're only eating them because they were seeing them as scarce or off limits. So I imagine this has made you think a bit, which is a good thing. Give yourself time to ponder and process this before considering maybe what you'd be open to trying. Perhaps you could choose one thing you'd like to explore more and practice. And consider maybe not doing some things that you've always been used to doing. Change is a funny old thing. It's quite frightening. So what could you not do in the future? Now don't go anywhere. My pick and mix is coming up next. Right, it's pick and mix time. Now, I want to provide 3 specific tips for navigating Halloween or any other food-focused event if you're in the midst of an eating disorder. Number 1, can you play it forward and visualize how you want to feel to help you feel more prepared? So Maybe imagine you're going to go trick-or-treating, or you're going to walk into a party, or you're handing out food. Try picturing what may happen and write down the coping strategies you could use in these scenarios so that you have a game plan. So perhaps think about how you might interrupt unhelpful thought processes if you begin ruminating. Can you take some supportive statements with you, for example, stick them in your pocket? And know that if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to step away and have a breather. Can you have someone who can check in on you and support you if needed? And maybe consider giving the heads up in advance to people that you trust before you meet them about, what comments might be helpful or unhelpful. And lastly, don't compare what you have with what others have to eat. Number 2, plan some non-food related activities. This is really important so that it's not all food focused, because that can be exhausting. And this is also particularly helpful after a food focused event where you might be feeling rather stressed and exhausted. So think of things that you can go and do that don't center around food, a mixture of things that are maybe active and relaxing that get outside, and give yourself some space afterwards to process the stuff that might come up for you. Maybe have a plan in place for the next day, which may feel harder as a result. So maybe a more chill day, or something where you go to the cinema or go and do something that's going to take your mind off things. Number 3, practice self-compassion and kindness. If things don't go exactly as planned, and that can happen, remind yourself of your previous successes in recovery. Keep moving forward. It doesn't matter how tiny your steps are, but when you slip, it means you're human. Practice that self-compassion. Recovery from eating disorders, doesn't happen overnight. And what happens on one holiday is less important than the fact that you're actively aiming to recover in the long term. So I hope these help. That's it for this episode, my friends. Thank you for joining me. If you like what you've heard, please do subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up. I mentioned the diabetes episode, but the next episode is all about the ups and downs of healing your relationship with food and recovery, the doubt and the fear of going backwards, and how these can show up for you. So there'll be lots of reassurance and ways to navigate this feeling of uncertainty. If you'd like to carry on the conversation before then, please do email me at mel@wakemannutrition.com. Come and find me on Instagram at mel_wakeman_RNUTR. That's the registered nutritionist bit. Or if you're a lurker on TikTok, search for Cake Over Keto and you'll find more eating disorder content. Take care of yourselves, folks. Know that you always make sense, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.